Pause it! Pause it right there! Kraltok's massive stone-gray fist slammed the hollow slate so hard the anti-grav table wobbled, spilling 3 drinks and sending a bowl of fermented grub sprawling on the floor. The 8-foot Tharvan's backward-growing tusks were practically vibrating with excitement as he jabbed at the frozen image. Look at that lunatic! He's on fire, and he's still charging! The hole in the hull had seen its share of excitement. Bar fights, drug deals gone wrong, that incident with the Procyon ambassador and the dancing girls, but nothing quite like a dozen hardened mercenaries losing their minds over human combat footage. On screen, frozen in high definition, a human soldier sprinted through what looked like Hell's own garden party. Half his tactical vest was literally in flames. His face was a mask of mud, blood, and that morning's half-digested breakfast. He was missing his helmet, his rifle, and apparently any sense of self-preservation. In his hands, a sharpened piece of starship hull plating that he was using like a machete. Behind him, a Corvin heavy tank exploded in a fountain of superheated plasma.
"Resume playback,"
whispered Yila. The Selvari pilot had seen combat. They all had. But this... The footage resumed. The burning soldier, the tactical display identified him as Corporal Carey J, dove through a wall of plasma fire that should have vaporized him, but between his speed and armor, however tattered it may be, he managed to dodge most of the plasma fire. Came up rolling, used his improvised blade to sever something important on a hovering gun platform. The platform crashed into 2 Corvin infantry, giving Carey enough time to steal one of their rifles and empty the entire power cell into an advancing squad. He was laughing the entire time.
"Motherless void,"
breathed Rickon, the Eresian's antler hair standing straight up.
"He's enjoying it. The human is actually enjoying combat."
"It's not combat," growled Sectim, a scarred Fenir mercenary nursing his 6th drink. "He's just some insane human on a power trip, and maybe a lot of meth." Yila tilted her head in curiosity.
"Do they still make such a primitive drug?"
Sectim shrugged. "Dunno." The documentary's narrator, some pompous Altarian academic who'd clearly never been within 3 systems of actual fighting, droned on about humanity's unique evolutionary adaptations and persistence predation transformed into military doctrine. But the mercs weren't listening to the commentary. They were watching the impossible unfold in real time. The scene shifted. Aerial footage now, showing the full scope of the nightmare. A human unit, maybe 30 soldiers, was completely surrounded in what the captions identified as Jungle Sector 7, Callus 442B. The Green Inferno they called it, not because of the vegetation. Because everything was on fire. "This is day 4 of the siege," Kraltok read from the data stream. "No reinforcements, no resupply. Ammunition was exhausted 36 hours ago."
"Then what are they fighting with?"
Yela asked. The answer came immediately. Everything. They were fighting with everything. A human sergeant, the tactical display stuttered trying to process his biosigns, settled on anomaly, had just beaten a Corvin shock trooper to death with its own severed arm. Another soldier had turned a medical scanner into an improvised EMP device, shorting out an entire squad's armor before going in with the ceramic dinner plate sharpened into a throwing disc.
"Show that again,"
demanded Teeker, a 4-armed Alteran who'd been in more battles than he had fingers.
"The thing with the tree."
The footage rewound. A human private, who couldn't have been more than 19 standard, had somehow gotten into the canopy. When a Corvin patrol passed underneath, she dropped onto their hover tank. But not just dropped. She'd wrapped det cord around a massive branch, turning it into a 30-ton spear that punched through the tank's armor like tissue paper. The tank's explosion launched her into another tree. She hit hard enough to shatter bones. She got up anyway.
That's impossible!"
Rickon's voice had gone up an octave.
"The human skeletal system doesn't—"
"Adrenaline," said a voice from the bar. Quiet, matter of fact. Hell of a drug. Everyone turned. Calvin Marshall stood behind the bar, casually polishing a glass. He wasn't watching the footage. Didn't need to. He knew exactly what they were talking about. You know about human combat drugs? Sectum asked suspiciously. Not drugs, just biology. Marshall held the glass up to the sputtering neon light. Adrenaline, endorphins, pure spite. Push a human hard enough and the body stops asking the brain for permission. Just runs on autopilot and anger. Speaking from experience? Kraltok tried to make it sound like a joke. Marshall set the glass down with a soft clink. That was my squad. The bar went silent. Not the gradual quieting of conversation, but the instant stillness of prey recognizing a predator. Even the terrible synth jazz from the speakers seemed to hold its breath. On screen, that anomalous sergeant was dragging 2 wounded soldiers through plasma fire, using a scavenged Corvin rifle one-handed to lay down covering fire. His face was younger, less scarred, but unmistakable. That was my first battle, Marshall added, reaching for another glass. Kraltok's mouth opened and closed like a fish discovering air. That's you? The one the tactical computer couldn't? Sergeant Calvin Marshall, Wendigo Unit. He said it like he was listing ingredients. Though back then I was just Corporal Marshall, wondering why the hell I'd volunteered for recon. The name hit the bar like a gravitational anomaly. Wendigo. Every mercenary knew the stories. The ghost unit that always brought their people home. The squad that turned leave no one behind from a motto into a threat.
But the stories,
Yila whispered.
They say Wendigo Unit once.
Held Thermopylae Station for 8 days with 12 operators and whatever they could steal from the enemy. Yeah. Marshall started polishing another glass. Lost my taste for Corvin field rations after that one. Teaker leaned forward, all 4 arms on the table. They say you ate MREs. Marshall cut him off. Meals rejected by everyone, except when we ran out. Then we ate Corvin rations. Then when those ran out, he shrugged. Tree bark tastes better than you'd think if you boil it long enough. On screen, the documentary had reached the climax. Day 6 of the siege. The Corvin commander, frustrated by the humans' refusal to die properly, had called in orbital support. The jungle burned. The ground turned to glass. Any sane species would have surrendered or died. The humans dug in deeper.
How?
Rickon's scientific mind was struggling.
The heat alone should have...
Mud, Marshall said simply. Covered ourselves in mud, hid in the rivers when the bombardment came. Lost Jordan that way, boiled in his armor. His hands never stopped moving, glass after glass, perfectly clean. Took us 3 hours to dig him out, another hour to bury him properly. The Corvins thought we were done after that. But you weren't, Sectum said. It wasn't a question. No. Marshall's smile was a thin, dangerous thing. We were just getting angry. The footage showed what happened next. The humans had stopped defending, started hunting, moving through the burning jungle like vengeful ghosts, using the smoke and flames as cover. The Corvin army, 3,000 strong, began reporting missing patrols, then missing platoons, then entire companies gone silent. Psychological warfare, breathed Teaker. You turned their own tactics against them. Nothing psychological about it, Marshall corrected. We just needed their supplies. Water, mainly. Weapons were a bonus. A young pilot at the end of the bar, barely old enough to fly by the look of him, raised a trembling hand.
Did you really make that Corvin colonel call his own retreat?
For the first time, Marshall looked up from his glasses, really looked at them. His eyes were the color of old earth coffee, warm and bitter in equal measure. Colonel Tartak, good soldier, decent being. He paused. Terrible poker player. after we took his command post.
You took their command post?
3 voices said it simultaneously. They were between us and the medical supplies. Anyway, after we took it, I offered him a deal. 1 hand of cards. He wins, we surrender. I win, he calls the retreat and leaves the medical supplies.
And he agreed?
He had 43 soldiers left out of 3,000. We had 28 out of 30. Marshall shrugged. Seemed like good odds to him.
What did you have?
Pair of 3s.
What did he have?
Full house. The bar erupted.
Then how?
I lied. Marshall went back to his glosses. Told him I had a straight flush. He believed me. Called the retreat. Even left us a case of their good stuff as an apology for the inconvenience. A pause. Carrie drank most of it. Kid never could handle Corvin brandy. The footage had ended, replaced by after-action statistics. The humans had suffered 90% casualties. They'd inflicted 3,000% casualties in return. Military theorists were still arguing about whether it was brilliant tactics or collective insanity. Both, Marshall said, though no one had asked. Definitely both. The bar's reinforced door exploded inward, startling everyone. The Fenir Blades, a Fenir gang of brutish outlaws and bullies, had arrived for their monthly collection, and their timing couldn't have been worse. Or better, depending on your perspective. The pirates swaggered in like they owned the place, 7 of them, armed to their multiple teeth, cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the neon light. Their leader, a walking disaster of scarred flesh and bolted-on weapons, zeroed in on Grit, the 4-armed bar owner, who'd struck some sort of deal with the gang over the last few months. Marshall was just about done with their violent interruptions and stupid posturing every time they came in to collect a debt from Grit.
Protection fees went up,
the leader growled.
Triple this month, unless...
His gaze found the frozen frame on the hollow slate. Human soldiers, victorious and half dead, standing over a field of defeated enemies.
Unless you'd rather find out what a real fight looks like.
The leader grabbed a bottle of rare Centauri Reserve, worth more than most shuttles, and smashed it against the wall. The amber liquid splattered across a signed photo of the bar's opening day. Behind the bar, Marshall's eye twitched. That was a 2387 vintage, he said quietly. Too quietly. Another pirate laughed, sweeping an entire shelf of bottles onto the floor with his rifle butt. Glass shattered, expensive alcohol mixed with cheap on the sticky floor.
What's wrong, bartender? Worried about your insurance premiums?
Marshall's hands had gone very, very still on the glass he was polishing. Actually, yes. His voice was conversational, but Yila, who'd seen predators on her homeworld, recognized the tone. It was the sound of something deciding whether you were worth the calories to digest. Do you have any idea what insurance costs on a station like this? I've got a 50,000 credit deductible, and you just destroyed about 60,000 in inventory. The pirate leader grinned, gold teeth flashing.
Then you better pay up quick. Every second you wait, we break more.
Grit, Marshall interrupted, still polishing that same glass. Get everyone behind the bar, now. The 4-armed owner didn't argue, neither did the patrons. There was something in Marshall's voice that bypassed higher reasoning and went straight to the hindbrain's survival instincts. They moved, quickly, quietly, ducking behind the reinforced bar structure.
Smart, the leader approved. Keep the civilians out of the way. Very heroic, very human.
One of the pirates, smaller, meaner, with more augmentations than sense, noticed the patrons' faces, noticed where they were looking, noticed Marshall.
Hey, boss, he chuckled. I think the bartender wants to play hero.
He drew his plasma rifle with theatrical slowness.
What's wrong, human? That footage got you feeling nostalgic?
Marshall looked at him, really looked at him. The kind of assessment that catalogued every weakness, every tell, every point of failure in the span of a heartbeat.
You know what the difference is between that footage and right now?
Marshall asked conversationally.
What's that?
I'm sober this time.
He paused, considering.
And really pissed about my insurance rates.
He didn't vault the bar so much as flow over it, the glass in his hand completing its journey into the pirate's face with a wet crunch. The pirate with the pistol had good reflexes, military training probably. His weapon was already rising, finger tightening on the trigger. In a fair fight, he might have gotten a shot off. Marshall didn't do fair fights. The glass shards were still falling when Marshall grabbed the pirate's wrist, twisted sharply, and redirected the weapon toward his colleague. The plasma bolt took the second pirate in the shoulder, spinning him into a display of top-shelf whiskey. More inventory destroyed. Marshall's eye twitched again.
That's another 8,000 credits,
he muttered, driving his knee into the first pirate's solar plexus. The alien wheezed, doubling over. Marshall helped him the rest of the way down with an elbow to the back of the skull that made a sound like a mallet hitting wet meat. The fire extinguisher came off the wall in one smooth motion, not as a weapon this time, but as a shield. Two pirates opened fire simultaneously, their plasma bolts splashing harmlessly against the reinforced metal cylinder. Marshall counted shots, standard Fenir sidearms, 30-shot power cells. They'd panic-fired half their ammunition already.
Yela, he barked. Southwest corner, under the table. Emergency kit. Throw me the flare gun.
The Selivari pilot, bless her, didn't question. The maritime emergency kit, because of course a bar in space had maritime supplies, sailed through the air. Marshall caught it one-handed, never taking his eyes off the pirates.
You know what phosphorus flares do in oxygen-rich environments?
He asked conversationally, pulling the trigger. The flare hit the puddle of mixed alcohol on the floor, Centauri Reserve, Rigelian whiskey, and whatever rut gut the bottom shelf had contained ignited in a whoosh of blue-white flame. Two pirates screamed, diving backward. One crashed through a table that had survived 3 bar fights and a docking collision.
That table was an antique!
Marshall snarled, genuinely angry now. He charged through his own fire. The flames barely had time to lick at his boots before he was past them, driving his shoulder into a pirate's midsection. They hit the wall hard enough to leave a dent. The pirate's armor cracked. So did several ribs. Marshall spun, using the pirate's body as a shield just as his buddy opened fire. Plasma bolts sparked against armor plating. The smell of burned flesh and ozone filled the air. When the shooting stopped, Marshall shoved the dead weight forward, tangling the shooter's legs.
Kill him!
The leader's roar shook dust from the ceiling.
Kill him now!
Working on it!
One of the remaining pirates yelled, fumbling with something at his belt. Marshall's eyes widened.
Is that a fucking breaching charge? In my bar?
The pirate's grin was answer enough. Military-grade explosive, designed to punch through starship hulls. In a confined space like this, it wouldn't just kill everyone. It would turn the bar into a debris field.
Oh, hell no!
Marshall moved, not the economical violence of before, but something primal, something that reminded everyone watching that humans were persistent predators who'd evolved to run their prey to death. He hurdled a fallen pirate, slid across the bar top, scattering glasses he'd just finished polishing, and came up with a bottle in each hand, not as weapons, as projectiles. The first bottle caught the pirate in the throat, dropping him choking. The breaching charge tumbled from nerveless fingers. Marshall caught it before it hit the ground.
You know how much my premiums would go up if you detonated this?
He armed the device with practiced ease.
Actually, let me show you.
He slapped the charge onto the pirate leader's chest plate and kicked him toward the door.
3 seconds,
Marshall announced cheerfully.
Anyone want to bet whether he makes it outside?
The leader's eyes went wide. He turned, stumbling, running, screaming at his remaining men to get clear. They scattered like roaches, diving for cover. The explosion, when it came, was perfectly contained in the doorway. The leader's armor took most of the blast, though what was left of him wouldn't be bothering anyone again. The doorframe, already damaged from their entrance, gave up entirely. Half the entrance wall came down in a cascade of twisted metal and sparking wires.
My fucking deductible!
Each word was punctuated by Marshall grabbing and systematically breaking pieces of the nearest pirate. Arm, snap. Leg, crunch. Jaw, crack.
Do you have any idea what contractors charge on this station?
The pirate tried to scream. It came out as more of a wet gurgle. "Grenade!" someone yelled. Because, of course, they brought grenades to a bar fight. But this time, the pirate was smarter. He'd bounced it off the wall, angling for the cluster of patrons behind the bar. A perfect bank shot that would hit the civilians before anyone could react. Anyone human would have gone for the grenade. Marshall went for the pirate. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed the alien's arm and redirected it just as a second grenade left his hand. The first grenade exploded harmlessly in the ruins of the entrance. The second sailed directly into the pirate's own position.
Geometry,
Marshall explained helpfully before diving behind the bar. The explosion rearranged what was left of the furniture. When the smoke cleared, 2 more pirates were down, peppered with shrapnel from their own weapons. 2 pirates left. They'd finally realized what they were dealing with. This wasn't some washed-up veteran drowning his sorrows. This was a man watching his insurance premiums skyrocket in real time.
Please!
One of them stammered, backing toward what used to be the door.
We'll go! We'll leave! We'll...
Marshall vaulted back over the bar, landed next to him, and drove a thumb into a specific nerve cluster that made the pirate's left side go completely numb.
"You'll pay for the damages,"
Marshall corrected.
"Starting with the 2387 Centauri Reserve. Market value, 15,000 credits."
We don't have...
Marshall's other thumb found another nerve cluster. The pirate's right side joined his left in numb uselessness. He toppled like a felled tree.
"Then you'll work it off. Kitchen duty, minimum wage. Should only take..."
Marshall did quick mental math.
8 years, assuming you don't break anything else."
The lost pirate, barely more than a kid, probably on his first raid, had his hands up so high they might achieve orbit.
I surrender! I'm done! Please don't make me wash dishes for 8 years!
Marshall paused, blood dripping from a dozen small cuts, someone else's blood painting his knuckles like war paint. Behind him, his bar looked like someone had declared war on architecture and won.
"You know what?"
He grabbed the kid by the collar, lifting him one-handed.
"You're going to do something for me.
Anything!
You're going to go back to every pirate crew in this sector. You're going to tell them that this bar is off limits. You're going to explain in detail what happens to people who damage my inventory or threaten my customers."
He pulled the kid close enough to whisper.
"And you're going to mention that I was having a good day, that I was feeling merciful, that next time..."
He smiled. It was not a pleasant smile.
"Next time, I'll let them meet the old me, the one from the footage. Understood?"
The kid nodded so hard his teeth clicked.
"Good. Oh, and one more thing."
Marshall set him down gently, almost paternally, then drove his fist into the pirate's stomach hard enough to lift him off his feet.
"That's for the antique table, you little shit."
The authorities arrived 15 minutes later, which was actually pretty good response time for Talora 9. The lead officer, a Selavari whose 4 eyes couldn't seem to coordinate where to look, took in the scene with professional detachment that cracked the moment he realized what he was looking at.
Did one person..."
"Bar fight," Marshall said helpfully, back to polishing glasses. "They started it." The officer's training said secure the scene, take statements, follow protocol. But something deeper, something that went back to when Selavari ancestors were prey animals on their homeworld, said, don't antagonize the apex predator. He saluted, an actual military precision salute to a bartender.
"Sir," he managed, "do you need medical attention?"
"Just a bandage. Maybe some of that synthetic skin if you've got it." Marshall touched the cut on his forehead. "Had worse from shaving." The younger officer, an Eresian rookie who'd been on the force all of 3 weeks, made the mistake of looking too long at the scene, at the precise violence, at the way every injury was exactly sufficient. No more, no less. His antler hair went rigid, his eyes rolled back. He fainted with a soft thump. Rookies, Marshall observed. No stamina. As the peacekeepers processed the scene, the bar patrons slowly emerged from cover. They looked at Marshall differently now, not with fear. Well, not just fear, with the kind of respect reserved for natural disasters that pour excellent drinks.
I have to ask,
Yila said, approaching the bar carefully.
The thing with the grenade, catching it like that, wasn't that incredibly dangerous?
Everything's dangerous if you think about it too hard. Marshall poured her a fresh drink on the house. Besides, Corvin grenades have a manufacture defect. The fuse runs half a second slow if they've been stored in low humidity. This place, he gestured at the bar's recycled air system, dry as a Martian sense of humor.
You calculated all that in the moment?
Pattern recognition. After the third or fourth hundred grenade, you start to notice things. Kraltok finally found his voice. The stories about Wendigo Unit, about what you did after Green Inferno, are they true? Marshall's hands paused for just a moment. Depends which stories. Titan Station. Classified. The Siege of New Kolkata. Also classified. The thing with the Procyon ambassador's daughter. Definitely classified. A ghost of a smile. And anatomically improbable. The conscious pirates were loaded into the transport, including the leader who was starting to come around. He looked back at the bar, at Marshall, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Understanding, maybe, or just good old-fashioned terror. Hey, Marshall called out. The pirate flinched. Tell your friends, this bar is under Wendigo protection. Anyone who disagrees can take it up with me personally. The pirate nodded so hard something in his neck popped. As the transport lifted off, Grit finally emerged from wherever he'd been hiding. All 4 arms were shaking, but his primary eyes were gleaming with capitalist fervor. Do you know what this means? He asked breathlessly. A Wendigo operator tends bar here. The publicity, the credibility. We'll be the safest bar in 3 systems. I just pour drinks, Marshall said firmly. I don't do interviews. I don't tell war stories. And I definitely don't sign autographs. But... Grit. The tone shifted, just enough to make the owner's secondary arms stop gesturing. I like this job. I like the quiet nights. I like that nobody usually shoots at me. You want to advertise that your bar is under protection? Fine. But I'm not a tourist attraction. Clear? Crystal clear. Absolutely. Just a normal bartender who happens to be capable of... He gestured at the devastation. That! Good. Marshall went back to his glasses. Now, someone want to help me move these bodies? They're blocking the good whiskey. The next hour was spent in cleanup. The patrons, still high on adrenaline and proximity to violence, pitched in with enthusiasm. Even the peacekeepers helped after they'd finished processing the scene and realized that Marshall had technically saved them from having to deal with an active hostage situation. As they worked, stories started flowing. Not from Marshall, he remained professionally silent on his past, but from the others. Everyone had a human story now. My cousin served with humans on Kepler Station, Teeker said, using all 4 arms to right an overturned table. Said they turned the entire recreation deck into a still when supplies ran low. Kept morale up by getting everyone thoroughly drunk on something they called rocket fuel. 2 parts engine coolant, 1 part medical ethanol, and something organic they grew in the vents. Probably potatoes, Marshall said absently, then caught himself. Or so I've heard. The Battle of Sigma Draconis, Rickon added, his scientific mind warming to the topic. Humans held the line for 17 hours after their suits ran out of oxygen. They shared respirators, passed them around like canteens.
The medics said it was impossible, but... But humans are stubborn, Marshall finished. We're too stupid to know when we're supposed to die, so we just don't. Young Vic, the rookie pilot, had been quiet through the cleanup. Finally, he worked up the courage to approach Marshall directly.
I'm shipping out tomorrow, he said, joining a mixed-species crew. Any advice for working with humans?
Marshall considered while rehanging the fire extinguisher, or what was left of it.
Feed them regularly. They get cranky when they're hungry. Make sure they sleep. They'll say they don't need it, but after 72 hours, they start making really bad decisions. And if they start laughing during combat, he met the kid's eyes. Duck. It means they've stopped caring about collateral damage.
Is that what happened in the footage? You all just stopped caring?
No. Marshall's voice went quiet. We cared too much. About each other. About getting home. About making the bastards pay for every drop of blood.
He shook his head.
Caring too much makes humans dangerous. We'll burn down the galaxy for the people we care about.
Is that why you are out here?
Hila asked.
At the edge of nowhere?
Marshall was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral.
Sometimes the best thing you can do for the people you care about is stay away. Let them have normal lives. Let them forget what you had to become.
The bar fell silent again, but it was a different kind of quiet. The kind that acknowledged old pain without poking at it.
Well,
Grit said, breaking the moment,
I think we've all earned a drink. First round's on the house.
A cheer went up. Nothing brought people together like free alcohol and shared trauma. As Marshall poured, the stories continued to flow. Tales of human endurance, ingenuity, and sheer bloody-minded refusal to quit. Each story wilder than the last, and Marshall occasionally correcting the most egregious exaggerations.
No, humans can't actually breathe vacuum for 30 seconds. Jonathan just held his breath really well. The story about using a black hole as a weapon is mostly classified. Yes, we did tape a knife to a cleaning robot and name it Stabby. No, it didn't take out a whole platoon. Just the one guy who wasn't paying attention.
As the night wore on and the bar settled into its new equilibrium, Marshall found himself almost relaxing. This wasn't so bad. The patrons were giving him space, the pirates were gone, and nobody had asked for his autograph. Maybe he could make this work after all. That's when Kraltok pulled up the next video.
Hey, is this you two? The siege of... Nope.
Marshall's hand shot out, closing the holoslate with enough force to crack the screen.
That's enough war footage for one night. Or ever. Definitely ever. But... Kraltok.
Marshall leaned on the bar, fixing the Tharvan with a look that had once made a Protean admiral reconsider his life choices.
Do you know what the worst part of war is? The dying? The remembering.
He straightened up, went back to his glasses.
I've got enough ghosts in my head without adding digital ones. So let's make a deal. You don't play war footage in my bar, and I don't demonstrate why they call us Wendigo Unit. Fair? More than fair. Absolutely fair. Couldn't be fairer. Good.
Marshall poured the Tharvan a drink.
On the house, for being smart.
The rest of the night passed peacefully, or as peacefully as a bar full of mercenaries hopped up on adrenaline and free drinks could be. There were 3 more fights, but they were the normal kind. Disagreements over payment, someone's mother's honor, the usual. Marshall broke them up with a word or a look, and once by simply walking over and standing there until both parties decided they had somewhere else to be. As the station's cycle shifted toward what passed for dawn, the crowd finally thinned. The regulars stumbled off to their ships or quarters, heads full of alcohol and stories. The peacekeepers had long since finished their work, leaving behind only the lingering smell of forensic chemicals and a citation for minor structural damage that Grit had somehow talked down from catastrophic assault on architecture. Marshall was alone in the bar, finally, methodically cleaning up the last of the night's chaos. He moved with the same mechanical precision he'd shown in combat, every movement efficient, purposeful. Just another night's work.
You know they'll be back,
A voice said from the doorway. Marshall didn't look up. He'd heard Yilla approach. Salivari were quiet, but not that quiet. The pirates? Yeah, probably. Word will spread. Every crew in the sector will want to test the human, see if the stories are true. He shrugged. Job security, I guess.
That doesn't bother you?
Lady, I spent 6 days in a burning jungle fighting off 3,000 enemies with 30 soldiers and whatever we could steal. A few pirates? He actually smiled. That's just Tuesday. Yila stepped fully into the bar, all 4 eyes studying him.
Can I ask you something? Not about the war, about after.
Marshall paused, then nodded.
How do you do it? Go from that
She gestured at the space where 8 pirates had learned hard lessons.
to this, just pouring drinks and living a normal life.
Who says it's normal? Marshall finally looked at her. You think I picked this job at random? Dark bar, multiple exits, good sight lines, clientele who mind their own business? This isn't retirement. It's just a different kind of patrol.
That's actually really sad.
Maybe. He went back to cleaning. But it's better than the alternative.
Which is?
Going home. Trying to pretend I'm the same person who left. Watching people I care about realize I'm not. He wrung out the rag with more force than necessary. At least here, nobody expects me to be anything other than what I am.
And what's that?
A bartender who's really good at his job. The smile was sharp enough to cut. Both jobs. Yila nodded slowly.
For what it's worth, I'm glad you are here. We all are, even if we're terrified of you now.
Good. Terror keeps people polite. He tossed her the rag. Now help me flip these tables back over. Grit will have a seizure if he sees his bar looking like a war zone.
Technically, it is a war zone now.
Nah. Marshall grabbed one end of an overturned table. War zones have rules of engagement. This is just Talora 9 on a rough night. They worked in companionable silence for a while, setting the bar back to rights. As they finished, Yila asked one last question.
The laughing in the footage. Carrie and the others. Were they really enjoying it?
Marshall considered his answer carefully. You ever been so scared you couldn't think straight? So tired you couldn't see? So angry you couldn't breathe?
Once or twice.
Now imagine all 3 at once, for 6 days straight. Your brain can't process that. So it does something else. It makes you laugh. Not because anything's funny, but because the alternative is screaming until your throat bleeds. He set the last chair upright. We weren't enjoying it. We were just broken in a way that looked like joy.
That's somehow worse.
Yeah, it is. He moved back behind the bar, his kingdom of bottles and glasses. That's why I pour drinks now. Much healthier coping mechanism. Yila headed for the door, then paused.
Same time tomorrow?
Bar opens at 1700 station time. Though I'd give it a few days before bringing friends. Let the smell of pirate clear out first. She laughed, actually laughed, and left. Alone again, Marshall finished his closing routine. Bottles secured, glasses cleaned, register counted. Normal bartender things. He very carefully didn't think about the footage, about Green Inferno, about the weight of dog tags he still wore under his shirt. As he reached for the lights, something caught his eye. The hollow slate Kraltok had been using, cracked but still functional. The video queue was still open, showing thumbnails of other famous human military engagements. Thermopylae Station, New Kolkata, Titan. So many ghosts, so many memories. He picked up the slate, intending to delete the queue. Instead, he found himself opening a different file. Not military footage, those days were behind him. Just a simple image. 30 soldiers in mud-stained uniforms, exhausted but alive, grinning at the camera like they'd just won the lottery. Wendigo Unit, Green Inferno, Day 7. "You magnificent bastards," he said quietly. "We actually made it." He allowed himself 30 seconds of remembering, the good parts mostly. Carrie's terrible jokes, Rodney's even worse singing, the LT's speech about nobody dying on his watch, and then keeping that promise against all odds. 30 seconds. Then he deleted the file, turned off the lights, and locked up. Tomorrow there would be more drinks to pour, more pirates to discourage, more stories to deflect. But tonight, just for a moment, he'd let himself remember why he'd fought so hard to survive. Not for glory or medals or documentary footage, just to see another sunrise, even if it was the artificial dawn of a station orbiting a gas giant at the ass end of nowhere. Calvin Marshall, former sergeant of Wendigo Unit, current bartender and occasional pirate deterrent, walked back to his quarters through Talora 9's neon-lit corridors. His footsteps echoed in the artificial night, steady and sure. Behind him, the hole in the hull sat quiet and dark, waiting for another night of controlled chaos. Word would spread. The pirates would come. And Marshall would be ready, standing behind his bar with a rag and a smile that promised violence to anyone who disturbed his peace. Because that's what humans did. They adapted. They survived. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they found a place where their particular skills were appreciated, even if those skills involved turning bar furniture into weapons of mass destruction. Especially then. 3 days later. The hole in the hull was packed. Word had indeed spread, but not the way anyone expected. Instead of pirates looking for trouble, the bar was full of curious locals, off-duty peacekeepers, and merchants who suddenly felt very safe drinking where a Wendigo operator poured the drinks. Marshall moved behind the bar with his usual efficiency, pouring drinks, making change, pretending not to notice the way conversations died when he passed. The repairs were coming along. The new door was installed, the wall patched, most of the furniture replaced. Insurance had covered some of it. The rest was coming out of his salary for the next decade or so. That's when he noticed the jar. It sat at the end of the bar, a simple glass container with a handwritten sign. Bar Repair Fund, not tax deductible. It was stuffed with credits. Not just small bills either. 100 credit chips, 1,000 credit transfers, even what looked like a military paycheck worth 5 grand. "What the hell is this?" Marshall asked Grit, who was trying very hard to look innocent with all 4 arms.
"Community support," the owner said. "The regulars started it. Said it wasn't right, you protecting everyone and eating the damages yourself."
"I don't need charity."
It's not charity.
Yila interrupted from her usual spot.
It's an investment in our continued ability to drink without being robbed, shot, or extorted.
Kraltok raised his glass.
"To the bartender who keeps the peace, and his terrible insurance premiums."
The toast echoed through the bar. Marshall stood there, genuinely speechless for the first time since Green Inferno. These people, aliens he'd served drinks to, nothing more, had collectively decided to help him rebuild. Not because they had to, not because he'd asked, just because it was the right thing to do. He cleared his throat, processed emotions like unexpected grenades.
The damages were my responsibility. I chose to engage.
"You chose to protect us,"
Rickon corrected.
"from pirates who would have hurt us, robbed us, maybe killed some of us. You think we don't know that? You think we're stupid?"
Plus,
added Teaker, all 4 arms gesturing.
"Do you know how much my insurance would have gone up if I'd been injured in a bar fight? Your premiums aren't the only ones that matter."
More voices joined in. Stories of what the Fenrir Blades had done to other establishments. Friends hurt, businesses destroyed, lives ruined by pirates who thought strength meant cruelty.
So yeah,
Yela concluded.
we're going to help fix the bar, because this is our place too, and because
She paused, choosing her words carefully.
sometimes the right response to someone fighting alone is to remind them they're not.
Marshall looked at the jar, at the faces around him, at the bar he'd chosen as his refuge, now chosen by others as theirs.
Fine,
He said gruffly.
but I'm keeping track. Everyone who contributes get a discount on their tab until it's balanced.
Deal!
Grit said quickly before Marshall could change his mind. As the night went on, the jar kept filling, not just from regulars. Word had spread to the docking crews, the maintenance workers, even a few off-duty peacekeepers who appreciated not having to arrest 8 pirates in a bar fight. Near closing time, Marshall found himself alone with the jar, counting credits and trying not to think too hard about what it meant. The total was substantial. More than enough for repairs, with plenty left over for improvements. Maybe even enough to lower his insurance bracket. A shadow fell across the bar. Marshall looked up to find a young human woman, mid-20s, wearing pilot's gear and an expression he recognized from mirrors.
You're Marshall?
She asked.
I pour drinks, that's all.
Right.
She slid a credit chip across the bar. Military issue, coded for 10,000.
For the repairs.
That's too much.
My brother was at Titan Station. Wendigo unit held the evacuation corridor for 6 hours after command wrote them off.
Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't.
He made it to the shuttles because of you.
Marshall was quiet for a long moment.
We lost 3 good people holding that corridor.
And saved 300.
She turned to leave, paused.
He named his daughter after your unit medic, the one who stayed behind to...
Rodney.
The name came out soft.
She hated her first name. Made everyone use her call sign instead.
Angel.
Yeah.
Marshall picked up the chip, added it to the jar.
Yeah, that was her.
The woman left without another word. Marshall stood there, holding a jar full of credits and memories, wondering how a simple bar in the ass end of nowhere had become this. Home, maybe, or close enough. He put the jar under the bar, safe from sticky fingers and stray plasma bolts. Tomorrow he'd start the repairs properly. Maybe add some reinforcement to the walls. Definitely invest in better furniture, the kind that could survive being used as improvised weapons. But tonight, he poured himself a drink. Not synthanol, but genuine earth whiskey from his private stash. He raised the glass to the empty bar, to ghosts both old and new.
To survival,
He said quietly.
messy, ugly, improbable survival. And to the idiots who make it worthwhile.
The whiskey burned going down. Good burn. Honest burn. Outside, Talora 9 spun on through the dark, carrying its cargo of dreamers and drifters, pirates and protectors. And in a battered bar held together by hope and community donations, a human veteran wiped down glasses and planned for a future that suddenly seemed worth fighting for. Not with plasma rifles and grenades this time, just with good drinks, bad jokes, and the occasional reminder that humans were apex predators who'd evolved beyond the need to prove it. Most of the time.